Let's go now to Hostage Square in Tel Aviv, a place that quickly became the gathering point for loved ones, friends of those captive, and thousands of Israelis gathering every single Saturday, at this time calling for their release. France 24's Mark Owen is there. Mark, good to talk to you. Tell us about the mood there, and people gathered since this morning, haven't they, watching the live images on the big screen of the hostage release.
The hostage release was beamed onto a big screen here at Hostage Square, and the four female soldiers dressed in what looked like IDF uniforms, but it appears to be something that was orchestrated by Hamas, knocking together those uniforms to create the military image, because those four women, of course, just aged 19 when they were taken, kidnapped. They were in their pajamas when that happened. So clearly Hamas has put together some uniforms, especially for today's ceremony of the handing them over. In terms of people's mood here, there's been a sort of bittersweet reaction, of course. Great happiness that these four women are back with their families and safe. But obviously there's still the question mark over so many others. And tonight there is a possible bump in the road in terms of the deal going forward. The fate of Arbel Yehoud, which is something that we've been talking about all day here in France 24. Although Hamas say that she is well, she was meant to be part of those released and still hasn't been, so there's still a big question mark there. So that is one aspect in which Israel is saying Hamas isn't abiding by the rules of the truce. But then on the other side of the equation, Hamas is saying that Israel isn't playing fair by its rules too, and that point that they are making concerns the Netzarim corridor. This is a place where the Israeli Defense Force, its military, has moved more troops in, and this is blocking people moving back into the north of the Gaza Strip, which is meant to start happening today. So this kind of impasse, if you like, is something that many people fear could become something bigger if it is not resolved quickly. The Qatari Prime Minister is said to be behind the scenes trying to negotiate with both sides to work a way forward. So it is a delicate situation, as always, but even more so tonight. However, here at Hostage Square, as it's now become dubbed in central Tel Aviv, people gathering, the messages of hope. There's a large message of peace for both sides and trying to somehow live together and coexist. But the overriding theme here is getting the hostages home, getting those back as soon as they possibly can, and resolving that situation.
Well, we heard earlier from Daniel Hagari, the IDF spokesperson, Mark, talking about, and you referred to it as well, not just the female civilian, but also the Bibas children. When you have Kafir, 2 years old, Ariel, 5 years old, mentioned by name, and their parents as well, that they were expected to be released. And it speaks deeply of that psychological torture right now, doesn't it? That this is being dictated to, the pace, the names by Hamas, Israel, as you've referred to, saying this is not part of the agreement. Tell us what's it been like talking to people in the square about that? The fact that the government have said that these are not the right names that should have been, and yet, clearly, for the families of the soldiers, they were just desperate to have them back.
The mother in question was certainly one of the people that Israel was expecting to be released. And obviously her fate is something that is on the minds of most people you speak to here. The idea that you have a family there, a mother, 2 young children, infants, basically in the hands of any organisation other than their own family, brings all kinds of nightmare scenarios to people's minds, and this is probably as nightmarish as it could possibly get. Their father, of course, is there as well, and as for the fate of all 4 of them, really, we don't know. It's the big question mark, and clearly that is something that is weighing heavily on people's minds. But sorting this out, of course, is going to take time. It's going to take a lot of resolve from both sides, and it's something perhaps that neither side's good at. That's compromise. I mean, clearly there needs to be a bit of give and take in terms of going forward. There is the deal that's been on the table since last May. Donald Trump coming to power somehow pushed it through. Trump's envoys in the region as well, talking as well behind the scenes, trying to get things moving again. And as we say, Qatar's Prime Minister trying to resolve the situation as well going forward. But people here, yes, marking the release of the 4 female soldiers coming back to their families, but clearly having thoughts for all the others who are being held. And the overriding feeling is that they would like to see this resolved in the best possible way for both sides going forward, to bring some kind of peace, prosperity and advancement for the whole region.
Mark, finally, we're seeing people with placards behind you with those still being held. Just tell us what it's like in the square, how it's grown, because I believe there's even a mocked-up Hamas tunnel, an art installation based on what hostages have been living through, to give people a small idea of psychologically what that's like to go through.
There is a mocked-up Hamas tunnel. I've been through it to take a look. It does give you a sense of certainly claustrophobia, if you're that way inclined, and it gives you a sense of kind of what it might be like to go through that kind of a structure. And the thought of being, frankly, stuck down there for more than a few minutes, it kind of doesn't sort of inspire any kind of good feeling. One can only imagine the sort of horror going through people's minds if they're forced to be down there in a kidnapped situation. It is a focal point of people's attention, people's tributes. Many people writing things on this tunnel, posting things around it. We see many groups coming in here. For instance, there was a group of people who worked in the same part of the Israeli Defense Force, Israel's military, as the 4 women who were released today. They've been down here all the time trying to raise their case in the greater public mind, trying to get things together in that sense to keep the momentum going to get them out. And I said to them earlier on, now that they're out, what happens? They said, well, we're going to keep going until everybody else is released as well. There's that sense of togetherness, which I think is fairly common in this kind of situation, albeit a very unique situation. One wonders what happens on the Palestinian side, though, because it's an incredibly difficult case to weigh up, of course. We know that the number of prisoners released is 200, the exchange rate being for one member of the military, it's 50 prisoners that are exchanged, so 4 military equals 200 prisoners. And we know that some of those prisoners are the worst that you could imagine in terms of crimes committed and sentences that they are serving, and they're being kind of expelled, deported, forbidden from going back into the Gaza Strip, going to countries like Egypt, Algeria, Turkey, to be negotiated. It's the International Red Cross that will mediate between parties in order to work that one out. But also there'll be some Palestinians reunited with their families after being on, some might say, flimsy charges, and not having any kind of recourse to justice in the way, being held without charge, held without any kind of inquiry into what they've done. So in that sense, one hopes that on both sides people are feeling a kind of resolution to the situation, a kind of advance forward, and maybe it can go forward to some kind of lasting peace. We, of course, are waiting and seeing.